let's dive in here. A lot to get to. I want to start with the Dallas Mavericks. And the question became entering Monday, should the Dallas Mavericks tank? Which is a fascinating question for a team that has Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. That was coming on the heels of 2 straight losses to the Hornets. They did beat the Indiana Pacers rather handedly on Monday night, so that sort of quells some of the concerns. They got a really big bump from the league. They rescinded Luka Doncic's 16th technical, so it allowed him to play against the Pacers on Monday night. He had one of the most wicked passes I've ever seen in my entire life. Go back and watch that if you haven't already. And so this question of should the Dallas Mavericks tank coincides with, are the Dallas Mavericks fucked? Was the Kyrie Irving trade a mistake? The Kyrie Irving trade itself is still to be determined. When you look at where the Mavericks are, and yes, it's not flattering. They are 4-8 in games that him and Luka Doncic have played together. When you look at the Mavs since the trade, and this will include some times that he has not played, some games that Luka Doncic has not played. And look, that's part of it. Doncic missed time. He hasn't always looked right coming back from injury. Kyrie Irving dealing with some foot stuff. He has not looked right in recent games. The Mavs have the eighth best offense, though, since the Kyrie Irving trade. But they're 21st in defense, which, look, I'm not going to lie, that's actually higher than I thought it was going to be. When you watch this team, it feels like they can't get stops, more so than even the Kings. But their transition defense has actually been like not totally crappy. They've had more issues when you're looking at second chance opportunities and then just protecting the basket in general. Opponents are shooting over 71% against the rim. Since the Kyrie Irving trade, that is one of the 4 worst marks in the league. These were and also let's dig into the data on the Kyrie Luka Doncic minutes. The Mavs are winning those minutes still, plus about 4 points per 100 possessions, 121 offensive rating. The defense has been bad, though. And with those two on the court, the transition defense is a problem, which is not surprising because Luka Doncic is always complaining to the referees. It's what you would expect, though. And you look at the rim protection, it's bad. The ball containment is bad. This is what happens when you trade your best defender to get Kyrie Irving, who's not, like on his best nights, I think you could say that maybe he's an upgrade over, probably not Jalen Brunson, but an upgrade over what Spencer Dinwiddie was doing this season. Maybe not what Spencer Dinwiddie was doing last season. Reggie Bullock, though, is not the same compared to last year. You're leaning a lot on Josh Green here. Jaden Harvey, been standout, but he's also a rookie. You're integrating Tim Hardaway Jr. back into the rotation, and he is still a defensive negative. Maxi Kleba, probably now your best defender. Is it him or Josh Green? I don't really know. It might even be Reggie Bullock. He has not looked right since he came back from his own hamstring injury that he had surgery on. And then you're still playing like JaVale McGee's just a non-entity at this point. You're still playing Christian Wood, and he's had some, I think, higher defensive moments than I would have thought. Doesn't feel like, from what I've caught of the Mavs so much lately. You're playing Justin Holiday, who wasn't even part of the Atlanta Hawks rotation. These are issues. Some of them are symptoms of the Kyrie Irving trade. You're not going to maybe go out. You probably still go out and get Justin Holiday, but you're not as reliant on some of these other guys if Dorian Finney-Smith is still here. But the Maxi Kleba stuff, the rim protection stuff, that was all an issue before Kyrie Irving came here. And so as much as everyone who listens to this podcast knows how I feel about Kyrie Irving, you can't lay all of this at his feet, especially when all the reporting has been from Mark Stein, from Tim McMahon. I think even Tim Cato over The Athletic has said this, that the Kyrie Irving is well liked amongst his teammates. And I think when you talk to players around the league, most of them tend to really like Kyrie, even the players who are on teams that he kind of submarined. Look at the Cavs and how LeBron James clearly feels about Kyrie now. That Boston team, I think Jaylen Brown has actually come out in defense of Kyrie at one point. I don't want to misspeak there, so I could be wrong. Maybe the teams he's played for, they have these more complicated feelings towards him, the players that are still there. But it does seem that Kyrie Irving's teammates, like at least in Dallas, let's forget about all the other places, Boston, Cleveland, Brooklyn, is there weird stuff going on with him and Kevin Durant? He clearly rankled James Harden the wrong way. So I'm not calling him the best teammate in NBA history, but it does seem like he's been, I believe this was coined by, was it Mark Stein, the consummate professional since he's been in Dallas. I think he's handled most of his media availability really well. He said some dumb shit still. I think like saying that the fans, if they're going to boo, they should come out and do a better job on the floor or whatever. That was just mind-meltingly stupid. But again, you look at the Mavs' struggles and it's the same things, maybe on a higher scale because you made the trade in the first place, but Kyrie Irving wasn't going to come in and fix your defense. He was going to help you have that second shot creator when you all while replacing the other second shot creator that you had in Spencer Dinwiddie. You were already at a shot creation deficit because of Jalen Brunson leaving, and we don't need to belabor that. That is part of this, though, too. This is not just about the Kyrie Irving trade. This isn't Kyrie Irving comes in, the Mavs all of a sudden suck something awful. Are they worse than I would have expected since the Kyrie Irving trade? Yes, although I would actually argue, and some of this probably has to do with their opponents and the games they've played. Luka Doncic missing some time. Their defense overall has just been a little bit better than I've expected. When you just go in and dig into the numbers, when you watch it, it doesn't feel that way. That problem is not going away this season. And the Mavs, you might think that they're dangerous if they get in a playoff series because we know Luka Doncic has been lights out in the playoffs, and absolutely sometimes he looks gas when he's there. Now he has Kyrie Irving. Maybe they'll work through some of the offensive warts that we've seen, which, again, the numbers don't always show it. But like Kyrie Irving kind of standing in the corner when he doesn't have the ball, that's not something that's going to make your offense maximized in the playoffs. It's not going to optimize you, certainly. It will make you easier to defend against better defenses that have time to game plan around you in between in between games, because they're going to have at least a day off and they're not facing other opponents in the interim there. So the Mavs are not contenders this season. Like they're at this point, yeah, you would expect them to make the Western Conference play-in. They're not guaranteed to anymore. And they are, as I record this, in 11th place. So they wouldn't be in the play-in right now. You're banking on them usurping. The Jazz will do what they can to not make the playoffs, but you're banking on them usurping one of the Thunder, the Lakers, maybe the Pelicans. I would say the Warriors and the Timberwolves and Clippers, those are teams that feel out of reach. So why not tank? Keep your top 10 draft pick this year. They owe it to the Knicks. And then you would be able to trade said draft pick theoretically after you actually select the player and trying and fix some of the issues that you have now. That really just doesn't make sense to me. Aside from the messaging that you're sending to Luka Doncic by doing that, you actually don't have a ton of time with Kyrie Irving before he hits free agency. You can assume just because the Mavs can offer him the most money over the most years that they are the favorites to keep him. And I think that's a fair way to go. Otherwise, Kyrie Irving would not have forced a trade away from Brooklyn. But I don't know that we can also pretend to know what Kyrie Irving is thinking or which way that he is leaning. And maybe the Mavs just, if they won't even give him a full max and he just decides, you know what, then I'm just going to take a pay cut, sign for $25 million with the Lakers since they decided to go with the cap space route, which I don't ultimately think they'll do. That's just one example. Aside from that, just the chances here, when you look at the records in the NBA, and like we are now for the Mavericks specifically, we're 73 games into the season. So the time to do this wasn't, remember 73, isn't it more? Is it 76 for them? I'm all over the place right now. Yeah, so we're 76 games into the season for the Dallas Mavericks. This is not like the time to just turn around and tank. They can realistically go from, like, look at the teams that are worse than them, the Bulls and the Jazz behind the standings. They could probably catch them if they really tank their asses off to have what would be one of it'd be the 9th worst record in the NBA. You're not going to get to the Pistons, the Rockets, the Spurs, the Hornets. Those are the bottom 4 records. The Blazers, they've thrown in the towel a while ago, it looked like, and the Magic, that's going to be your 5th and 6th worst team. The Pacers, even, and the Wizards. So, like, those to me are just going to be the teams that have the 8 worst records. Maybe the Jazz could catch one of them, but if you're the Mavericks, you have 39 losses. The Bulls have 38 losses. The Jazz have 40 losses. You can catch them. That's the difference of, as of right now, if you finished where you were, you don't make the play-in, you're going to have a 9.4% chance of getting a top 4 pick. If you get to, if you out-tank Washington and Chicago, you're going to have like a 20.2% chance. So you more than double your odds, and maybe you view that as worth it in this draft. But like, okay, cool. And I guess you could say, well, if they finish with the 9th worst record, that means that they get to keep their draft pick. That's fine, but you might just want to get that draft conveyance out of the way because how valuable is that 9th pick as a trade? Let's just say it's the 9th pick. How valuable is that 9th pick as a trade asset this season, off season? I think teams would be more interested in probably distant Mavericks first round picks, which you've already given one away, the 2029 first in that Kyrie Irving trade. So if you all of a sudden have to kick the can on that Knicks pick to 2024, you cannot trade a first round pick until 2026. And so you can only trade your 2026 or 2027 first round picks at that point. You can also trade your 2023 first after you use it on them. So like that puts you in a, or you could still trade your 2023 first round pick, whatever. That's not as enticing if you go 2023 and 26, 27 versus, oh, we can trade 24 and 26 right now. Like that is something you could do, or you could trade 25 and 27 to go with, along with 2029 that's out there to the Knicks. You can trade 2 first round picks this summer, plus other stuff, which you have Josh Green, you have Jaden Harvey. I don't know that I shouldn't say I don't know. Those are not going to be considered blue chip assets, but they're not nothing either. And so there are moves that you could still make, which is the other part of this for me. I don't think the Mavs are in this enviable position, but they have Luka Doncic, they have Kyrie Irving, and you can still go out when you look at the salary matching tools they have. Reggie Bullock, he has half his salary next year is guaranteed. So let's just view him as a $10.5 million expiring contract. At that point, you're only going to have, Maxi Kleber might still be viewed as an asset. He'll have 3 years at $33 million left on his deal as that extension kicks in. You could use JaVale McGee. He has 2 years left on his deal. Like teams might be willing to swallow that money. You also have Tim Hardaway Jr. will have 2 years left on his deal. Davis Bertans will have 2 years left on his deal. So you're kind of light on actual expiring contracts, but you have digestible salaries that are short-term obligations that aren't going to go past 2024, 2025 that you can then attach to those 2 first round picks, which, hey, teams might be interested in because of the combustibility you're already showing right now. Do I think that the Mavs would end up having the best offer for an OG Anunoby, let's say, or Mikal Bridges? I honestly don't know. Let's just say they go as high as 2 unprotected picks and then you're willing to give Josh Green and Jaden Hardy. I think it would be one of the more competitive offers. It's certainly not for a superstar level, but for those types of players, maybe they're even willing to include some swaps there. That matters. And they're not incapable of upgrading this roster. People are treating it like they've bankrupted all their assets. Again, I would not have made the Kyrie Irving trade, but this talk that the Mavs have no way out right now, it's too premature. Now, it becomes disastrous if you lose Kyrie Irving in free agency, but the market for him is, I would imagine it's going to be fairly sparse. Like, I don't even think the Lakers are going to act as a cap space team. Even if they're willing to go the sign and trade route, it's almost impossible to fit Kyrie Irving under the hard cap with LeBron and AD salary on the books. Where else is he going? And so I think even if he does leave, you're probably going to go the sign and trade route anyway. So hopefully you would get something in return for him. That's the disaster scenario. But guess what? That hasn't played out yet. Like, we don't know what Kyrie Irving is going to do. And I think it's fair to say, as I said at the top of this, that the Mavs are overwhelming favorites to re-sign him. I wouldn't, again, pretend to know what Kyrie Irving is thinking, but just the way he forced his way out of Brooklyn and the logistics of the situation and the cap space climate. So many of the teams that have it are sort of in the early stages of a rebuild, or they're the Rockets and they're going to chase James Harden. So that disaster scenario is not played out just yet. And if, as we expect, Kyrie Irving comes back, yeah, the roster's still facing the same issues. There are things you could do on the cheap to probably address rim protection. Go after a Bismack Biyombo. Someone like that would go a long way towards helping this team. You could take flyers on defense first guys on the perimeter, or just cheaper back-end rotation players for other teams, like a Javonte Green would really help this roster. You can go that route, and you can still make trades. You're still going to have your mid-level exception. I don't know who you can get for that. It seems like Bruce Brown and Matisse Thybulle have both played their way out of that price tier. Matisse Thybulle being a restricted free agent also makes it super difficult. I don't know if Hamidou Diallo does enough for this roster, but you have your mid-level exception. That certainly can get you an upgrade on the big man front. And then you can go out and trade, I would argue, for at least one other perimeter defender. And maybe you break it up into 2 separate trades where it's, well, we're not going to consolidate into, and let's say OG Anunoby's an option. He would be perfect for this team, as would Mikal Bridges. I think OG would probably make more sense just because the Mavs don't need the shot creation as much, which Mikal Bridges would bring you. They need the defensive range up front more. And I think OG would bring you more of that. But let's just say you can get OG Anunoby. You don't have to go that route. You can kind of take it down a peg and do something like, okay, well, do we get a Royce O'Neal from Brooklyn? I'm not saying Brooklyn would help. I'm not saying that Brooklyn would help the Mavs out by trading Nick Claxton or Royce O'Neal, but like you can go after Royce O'Neal level players and try and just execute 2 separate trades on that front. You don't want to be net negative 2 first round picks in that scenario per se. And there are probably names here that none of us are certainly considering because we need to see how the trade market actually shapes out. And like I said before, if there is a star that becomes available, no, Dallas isn't going to have the best bid. But if you're going after a guy like Alex Caruso, that might not cost you 2 first-round picks. Just at the time he'll be in his deal and what direction are the Cavs going in at that point. Presumably you want a bigger wing defender if you're going to consolidate. So no, from the Mavs are not giving up 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso. But those are names that they actually have the assets to go out and get. I would think they could be in the OG Anunoby business. Like maybe I'm overstating there. What does it cost to get Jay Sean Tate out of Houston? He's been so banged up this year. He's banged up right now. The Rockets are kind of all over the place. They have Tari Eason there. KJ Martin's had a good year. They have Jabari Smith Jr. Are they willing to, move Jay Sean Tate without even giving up a first-round pick? That's the route you could go. You have enough offense to where it's like, he can kind of put the ball on the floor and attack the basket. If his three's not falling, that's absolutely fine. So they're not without options, and they definitely should not tank this season. I'm not bullish on their future, but I do think we've kind of swung too far in the wrong direction. Both of these things could be true. The Mavericks have fucked up repeatedly, and what's happening now is not the result of the Kyrie Irving trade so much as the process that led them here, which was just misstep after misstep. And they can also still have hope. Like, they're not dead yet. This season, yeah, it's over. I'm sorry. Like, I can't, I don't know what first round opponent. I guess if it's the Grizzlies, like if you're going to go to a matchup with the Grizzlies, I might feel okay about picking Dallas in that, but I don't think there's a first round series they're going to have where I would pick them anyway. So this season, yeah, it's dead, it's done, but their future is not overwhelmingly bleak. I wouldn't say that they're in an enviable position. I think I already said it at the top of the podcast, but there is still hope here. And I think we need to remember that the Kyrie Irving trade is not the disease here. It's a symptom of the disease that is the Dallas Mavericks team building process.